This is Patrick Smyth. He's a chief learner at his tech consulting company, Iota School, and he teaches tech, and he specializes in tech accessibility. So he does this screen reader, learning to use a screen reader workshop. And I know for there's several people in here who use screen readers all the time. You're all experts. But for sighted people, it's often really difficult to learn how to use a screen reader. I personally have struggled to try to learn. And so Patrick is going to teach us in the next few minutes. So to start, well, I'll hand it over to him. But if you have an iOS device, get it ready, and we have some additional ones if you do not. So here, I'll hand it over.
Thank you so much, Jen. And I think I have I'm not as accessible as Josh and having absolutely I don't have any slides, but I have a resource. So if you want to try to access this webpage, if you're following along, hopefully they can put a link to this resource in the chat too. But you can also go to iotaschool.com, and it's on the front page if you scroll down. So we're going to grab some of these iPads and so on. Hopefully a certain number of you have iOS devices. But today we are going to learn to use a screen reader. And I do know, which is very cool, but it's actually the first time I've run this workshop where we're going to have a significant number of blind folks in the audience, which is good. And you guys can tell me what stinks about this and how I can improve it. But also, I hope it's a little bit validating to have people around you learn a screen reader. I think it's often kind of a weird private experience when you're a print-disabled person and you use a screen reader day to day, and you have all your little devices talking to you all the time, but you're using your phone in a modality that's often very different from the people around you, which can be a little alienating. So, I don't know, let me know if you find it a little bit validating to have people around you also have robots talking in their ear. We'll start with, this is toward the end of the day, so we've saved, Scott's was a pretty hands-on interactive one too. So we've saved some of the interactive stuff for the afternoon when you're probably flagging a little bit. But you're going to be, for most of this, you're going to be actually doing stuff, and we're gonna do a crash course in learning to use a screen reader, and then I'm gonna jump you in the deep end, and you're gonna try to do an accessibility evaluation of some website connected to you, whether it be your own personal website, your organization's website, a website you use every day, or an app that you frequently use on iOS or that you're interested in. So, obviously, I'm going to get into some caveats and so on. But let's get into what is a screen reader, and then I'll lay you some caveats and provisos and so on too. And I also just want to say, I'm from Queens. I talk fast. I can slow it down a little bit. I'll try. But can people hear me okay? Is that? Online, we trade batteries time. Okay, I sound even better now. Actually, I do sound better. All right, okay. So what is a screen reader? So first of all, I'd like to say, but when I'm not talking accessibility, I'm often talking, I'm teaching people how to use technology. I'm teaching people how to program. I teach data science at City College, which is the City University of New York college, and it's something I introduce people to that I really enjoy bringing people into this new world and it's a little different from screen readers, but I'm making an analogy. So it's that you all use your computer every day. You use your web browsers, you use your mail apps, your social media apps on your phone, all this stuff. You use it probably, I'm guessing, it may not be true of everyone, but you use it through a graphical user interface. So that basically means that the computer has an overlay which draws a lot of boxes and windows and buttons and all sorts of things on your screen. I'm going to pretend now, we're going to talk about screen readers in a minute, but say visually. But what is actually the case in people, there's a whole other, that's only the iceberg of the world of software. And one thing I teach my students is the command line or the terminal, or there's a lot of other words for it, the shell. But it's essentially a whole other world sort of lurking beneath the surface, another way to interact with your computer. And it does look like people hacking in an 80s movie or whatever. But it is also how I would say more than half of all software is written for for that world, mostly because it's often what programmers use, and programmers will often write just enough for them to use something, and they won't write the graphical part. So there's a lot of software out there that you can't use if you're only using graphical user interface. So similarly, and I'm also very excited to introduce you to this new world, which is this world of the screen reader, and that is similar to the terminal, which is sort of lurking beneath the surface. The screen reader is a completely different way of interacting with your computer, and essentially, or phone, but that's also a computer. So a screen reader is essentially it is a program that runs, allowing you to interact with your operating system and all its attendant applications and functionality non-visually. Okay, and I don't say it's not necessarily through audio, because there are different modalities that you can experience a screen reader through, and the main two being either listening to audio, so in listening to synthesized speech, or listening to a Braille display. And the Braille display is typically delivered through a what's called a refreshable Braille display, which are very expensive devices, often many thousands of dollars. They rival cars in their expense often, and it can be like easily $16,000 or something like that in some cases. They're much cheaper ones, but that's another way that screen readers can share information with their users. The current ecosystem of screen readers is the one we're going to be using today is VoiceOver on iOS, okay, which is a pretty different piece of screen reader technology. There's also a VoiceOver on Mac computers, which is the main screen reader used on Mac like desktop and laptop devices. It's also called VoiceOver. It's a pretty different beast. It's not really used very similarly. You have to kind of learn a different sort of thing for that. So we're going to be learning VoiceOver on iOS, which I would argue is the most intuitive screen reader, to learn in the first few hours or minutes or hours of using it. However, there is also the sort of Android's answer to VoiceOver, TalkBack. I would say doesn't have the same uptake in the blind community. People can maybe speak up if they disagree or if they're vocal Android users or something. But in my experience, VoiceOver seems to work for a lot more blind, visually impaired folks. There's also, I would say, on desktop, Windows is probably a little more popular for blind folks, and that they're divided into JAWS, which is a proprietary and somewhat expensive screen reader. Job Access with Speech is what it stands for. And then there's also NVDA, which is kind of my personal favorite on that platform, which is more of a scrappy, open source, and actually blind developed, which is very cool too. Australian blind fellows created NVDA, I believe in the mid-2000s, and I'm very glad they did. And it's very hackable, and so I talked that up a little bit more, but that's probably one of the few like really open screen readers right now. And then in addition, there's I'm a Linux user, so I have to mention it, but it's not the best screen reader. I'm sorry. I'm glad it exists, but it's Orca for Linux. And I feel like I'm missing one there, but Chromevox. Yeah, it's a little bit of an also ran. But on a Chromebook, you can use Chromevox, which is actually not terrible, and you can use it in Google Chrome with a little difficulty. Say if you're running Linux or something like that, it's actually not the worst. It's a little hard to get it working, but it's not a bad screen reader. All right, so let's head to the next, which I believe is is this the provisos and caveats, or is it? Oh yeah. Okay, so one distinction that's really important with a screen reader when you're entering this world of screen readers, and you're also thinking about this world of analyzing things for accessibility or building accessible things, is that there are sort of two ways of conceiving of two ways of conveying information. It's a little bit of a difficult distinction to get. And I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of accessibility folks in this room who are like, yes, I know this very well. So hopefully I'm not retreading too much ground for you guys, but basically it's this distinction between visual conveyance of information and semantic conveyance of information. And semantic is a really fancy word, but basically it means meaningful. Okay, so it means sharing meaning. And in the world of apps and in the world of, say, websites and HTML, there are structures. The computer will either know what a particular structure is, or object, or interface, or it won't. And I'm going to give an example, and then I'll explain it a little bit more. If this was one of my classes, this is when I would pop open a thing and like create a very simple website or something. But we're not live coding right now, so. But it's imagine. I'm sorry that many of you may not be super familiar with HTML, but behind the scenes in this, actually, can you hold down Mac button U? Can you hit that? Sorry, this is probably dangerous. Okay, but it worked. All right, so yeah, thanks, zoom in. And so, yeah, here's some scary looking stuff. Don't get too stressed out right now. But basically, this is what you're dealing with when you're under the covers whenever you're pulling up a website, right? So basically, to explain what we're seeing here is that it's HTML, which is, it basically is a structure of a web page. It's in a tree form, so it has a lot of nested structures. So it's things within things. So first there will be two elements that are two tags that create an element that's like all the HTML. And then you'll have another one that will be like the body of the text. And then within that, you can have all sorts of different structures. So for example, you can have if you have a heading, you will have start and end with a heading tag. It's H1. And then inside that, you would put the text of the heading. And the reason we do this is because the way HTML is conceived, it's what we call a markup language, but basically it is a way of describing documents. And what we mean when we're describing the document is we're telling the computer how the different elements, what they're for. Okay, so we say this is a heading. We say this is a paragraph, this is a list, this is a link, this is a button. These are things we explain to the computer, and we do that so that the computer knows how to build them, how to do it. Now, however, unfortunately, it would be kind of nice, and maybe Tony probably have something to say on this too. There are ways to build websites that will convey information visually, but they will not be semantic in the sense that the computer will have no idea what you're intending to do. So the example could be that you can unintimidate them now if you want. Bring it back, bring it back. No. So say you are creating a button on a website. So the semantic way to do it is you open a tag, you say angle bracket, that's not a word people say too often, angle bracket, button, close angle bracket, you make a little tag that says button, then you put, some information about the button, and then you close the tag, you do like angle bracket / button, angle bracket, okay? Sorry. I'm losing people by saying angle bracket so many times, but you basically, you create a button by saying button. This is a button, computer. However, it's very easy to make a button by using unsemantic tags. And you could make it look identical to a button that is actually properly described to the computer. And to a sighted, or let's say non-disabled user using, say, driving around with a mouse and doing things in the quote-unquote conventional way, they would encounter the button just the same as they would the semantic button. However, if you're a screen reader user, the screen reader user relies on the distinction that structure actually be described properly. Okay, so I would say that distinction underlies not everything certainly, but a very large % of issues with accessibility. Is that people implementing visual conveyance of information without and conveying the semantic elements that would allow a screen reader to properly do their job. Okay, so if you understand that, and you can understand this idea of semantic, then semantic elements and making things semantic, making things meaningful, explaining things to the computer, then you will make much more accessible things. So let's talk about. We're going to kind of now transition toward this practical part where you actually start playing around with the screener. So get excited. This whole room will be filled with robot voices pretty soon. But let's do one little, I want to do these little caveats and provisos. Are we on that now, Jen? Warnings and, yeah, I'm making up new words for this. But yeah, so basically I want to say actually 4 things. And I only put 3 here, but there's actually one more that I want to say. And that is first, the point of this exercise is not so that you have empathy for blind people, so that you feel bad for us blind people. It will feel a little like that because for you, it will be a little bit difficult to use this. I'm speaking now to people who haven't used screen readers before. It may feel a little difficult and awkward to use the screen reader, and that's normal. And especially you're learning a new thing. However, most blind people who use screen readers every day, we've been using them a long time. We're pretty, facile with them. We're good at them. And not in all cases, but often. And so your experience of trying it out for the first time won't necessarily be as, I won't say smooth, because maybe using a screen reader should never be described as smooth, but it won't be as, facility comes with experience, and so your experience won't necessarily be the experience of a blind person using the screen reader, simply because a blind person will probably have been using it for longer. So I just want to say that that's not really the purpose of the exercise. The purpose of the exercise is so you actually get a little, you get a taste of it. But don't worry about us. It's good that we have screen readers. They're good to have. At the same time, on the flip side, don't assume that just because screen readers exist that blind people can necessarily do everything. And I also saying blind people, I really should say print disabled, because people with cognitive disabilities, dyslexia, other disabilities, for example, disabilities of mobility, also use screen readers. So I'm sorry, I'm blind, I'm being a little parochial there, but also there's a lot of other kinds of screen readers users as well. But unfortunately, as we've kind of seen today, not everything is made to be accessible. And that's a little bit maybe of an understatement, but a lot is accessible, and things have gotten better, and things will hopefully continue to get better. Don't think that just because they exist that we should necessarily be able to do everything, because with a screen reader, we are kind of reliant on things having been properly implemented, and that, we have accessible facilities with the app, with the website, whatever we're trying to use, with the OS. And then one more thing, I kind of alluded to this just now, but it's not just blind people, okay? So if you're saying, even if you learn to use a screen reader, don't assume that everyone using a screen reader is going to be blind, because it's just simply not the case. And also, don't assume that everyone using a screen reader, even blind people, have a range of different kinds of vision. I myself have about 2% vision, so I have no central vision. I have a little peripheral vision, which is useful. It's nice to have and all. But it's some things I can do, some things I can't. And that's true of a lot of blind people. So I don't make assumptions about people seeing things, not seeing things, or just because the screen reader is on, they may also want to use other accessibility features that may be visual. They may want to use dark mode. They may want to use other things, okay? So don't design assuming that people will be completely non-visual. And then finally, there's one other thing I wanted to add. It's not on here. I should add it after this, but and actually, this is inspired by a conversation between Josh Miele and Tony yesterday. And Tony was using the Orca screen reader, and he said, which actually has been my experience of learning a screen reader too, when I started learning many years ago, was that when you turn on the screen reader, it talks to you so much, it's pretty overwhelming. It's a sensory overload, right? And Josh said, which I agree with, it's like the first thing you teach people with a screen reader is you get it to talk. The second thing you teach them with a screen reader is to get it to shut up. So we will do that right after we teach it to, I'll teach you the magic command to get it to be silent, okay? So that will be an important part of this. All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to get these iPads down here.
Who doesn't have an iOS device?
You want to do that me thing that Josh did? Say me if you need an iPad. Yeah, that's more important, but I'm curious too. So. Do I have one, Jen, as well? My iPhone's pretty out of date too, so. This is like an iPad mini. All right, so we have activated, I'm going to show you a couple of different ways of getting this going. We're going to have a pretty wide array of devices, so I'm going to tell you a couple of different ways of getting from point A to point B. Hopefully one of them will work for you. If not, let us know, and we'll come around and help out, okay? Also, we have plenty of BVI people in this room, and hopefully they can also help you. They're your domain experts, okay? So tap them on the shoulder, tell them, what do I have to say to Siri to get this thing going, or, okay? So, how do you put it in some salt water, that's how you get it to stop talking. All right, so okay, we have, hopefully you have an iOS device in your hand. Is that a reasonable assumption, Jen? Should I give them a second? Okay, so there's two basic types of iGizmos that we're going to have to deal with. Okay, so one are the kinds that have the home button. Okay, these tend to be older devices. There's also iOS devices that are like the whatever number C, and that they're kind of the cheaper ones, and they also have the home button. I personally like a home button, but there tend to be the older ones. They're kind of trying to get rid of them. So if you have, what we're basically going to try to do is talk to we're going to do the straightforward way, and then I'm also going to show you another way in case it doesn't work for you. Not everyone is able to speak to Siri. I have a dad who's from Monaghan, and Siri doesn't really listen to him, so in Ireland, so we're going to try to talk to Siri. So I'm going to show you two different ways to get one of these iDevices to have Siri come up, and then what you're going to try to say when you got Siri's attention, and yes, this will be chaos because everyone's going to be doing it at the same time, but that's fine. It's part of the exercise. Okay, it's part of the fun of it. We'll try to wake you guys up in the afternoon. We're going to either hold down this home button. Okay, if you have one. And I'm going to try it. Well, let me do it. And then, if you don't have the home button, then you want to hold down the lock button. That's how you get Siri's attention. So I'm going to try it on this. Hopefully it works. I might have, oh, it's talking, but it didn't make a sound. Here's what you found. Great. Turn on voiceover. Good. Thank you. All right, so I just said I held down the home button, which is the button on the bottom middle of the device, and then I said, and go ahead, don't worry about talking over me. This is going to be a noisy session, okay? I held down the home button, which is in the middle, and then I said, when I had Siri's attention, which it didn't make it. I kind of like when it makes a sound. It didn't make a sound, but I did get its attention, and then I said, turn on voiceover. And then I waited. We're hearing that dulcet tones. We're hearing Samantha's dulcet tones, so that's really good. So the default voiceover voice is Samantha, so that's the one I use. So, all right. So we have voiceover on, maybe for some people. So I'm going to show you another way. I just want to run through that again because I want everyone to kind of get there, and then I'm going to also show you the long way to get there. Okay. Because if you can't get Siri to work, there's other ways of getting it to work. So if you didn't have the middle home button, what you want to do is hold down the lock button. On many devices, that's on the top right. Okay? So, and often that's the only button on those newer devices. Okay? So you want to hold down that button and say, turn on voiceover. Okay? And then, all right. So the long way to do it is, and I have to turn on, I'm not hearing mine, so I have to turn up the volume. Hang on a second, I want to get mine going here. Also, I should have used a lapel mic because I realized I only have two hands. Thanks, John. Thank you. Turn on voiceover. Okay, can you still hear me? Am I broadcasting? Yeah, okay. So if one thing I haven't told you, because it's the first time you turn on voiceover, it'll give you a warning saying voiceover may need to use your computer or whatever. What you want to do is, in that case, tap the button you want to activate, which is, it should say cancel or accept. You want to tap that accept, If it works, fine. If that works, fine. You may need to tap it once, and then wait a second, and then double tap again, and to sort of lock it in. And we'll talk about why you have to do that. I'm going to turn this up, so hopefully it comes over the mic a little bit. All right. So I want to tell you the essentials first, and then we're going to come around. I'll tell you the essentials, then I'll come around and make sure that people have their devices turned on with VoiceOver, okay? So to get it to say something, just touch anywhere on the screen. I'm wrapped up in this thing. All right.
Clock.
Okay, so I tapped
3:22 p.m.
randomly on the screen in the upper left, and it said clock, okay? So that's what you want. Now, say you want it to stop talking. Say it's talking, and you're becoming overwhelmed. Okay, so I'm going to tap that same area. It should probably say something like clock again. And then I'm going to take my 2 fingers, a gesture. So I'm going to take 2 fingers like I'm making the peace sign, okay? And then I'm going to tap once on the screen, okay? So I'm going to demonstrate. So I'm going to tap on the clock, and then I'm going to do the 2 finger.
3:20, comma, 3:23.
I want the clock, though.
Comma,
That's fine. I'm tapping. I silenced it by tapping twice with my 2 fingers. Not twice. I tapped once with my 2 fingers. So I make the peace sign. I got 2 fingers holding up, and then I tap. If you tap again, you got a great amount of sounds coming out of there. I don't know how you have train sounds coming out, but I like it. So if you wanted to resume speech, you can tap once more.
EM.
So, okay. I'll try another.
Double tap to open.
So one more thing. I'm going to make it speak the whole screen. I'm going to take my 2 fingers, my peace sign, and I'm going to swipe downward, okay? And then it's going to speak everything from where I am now. So from where I last tapped on the screen, it'll start speaking and keep going.
Hey, Patrick, before you do that.
Yeah.
So some people are accidentally starting their media player.
Oh, nice. Well, maybe that's part of the workshop.
Explain why that is?
Yes, because they probably, it's something called the magic tap. And it's actually a really cool piece of functionality. But basically, if you make your peace sign, you have 2 fingers sticking up, and then you tap twice, which is very easy. You know, I told you to do it once. If you do it twice, then you will activate the magic tap, and that is a contextual command. And typically, what it does is it plays your media. So if you have an audiobook, if you have some music, it will play it. I mean, I don't know. I'll try it on this. I doubt anything will play, but who knows? So this doesn't have any. It's newly set up, so it doesn't have anything. But yeah, for example, and also in other contexts, if someone calls you, you know, if you're using VoiceOver and someone calls you, so the phone is ringing, and you take your 2 fingers, you take your peace sign, and you tap twice, that magic tap contextually will answer the phone. Okay, so the magic tap is a way to do things quickly using VoiceOver, but it's based on context. And it will do other things in other contexts. Okay, the main thing it mainly does is play your media. Thank you, Josh. All right, so I do want to come around and make sure people have their things activated. But what I want you to do now, this is your assignment while Jen and I go around and make sure things are activated, is explore your home screen, okay? So you can go to your home screen, press the home button. If you're on another screen and you don't have a home button, iPad, then you may just be stuck on the screen you're currently on. That's fine for now. Just take your finger, 1 finger, don't worry about your peace sign. Take your 1 finger and explore the screen, okay? So just move your finger around the screen and explore. And the basic modality is as you move your finger over the screen, you will discover things on the screen. So it will read out to you items that you are currently touching, okay? And as a print-disabled user, that's useful because you're exploring the screen and you're finding out what's on the screen. What I haven't covered yet is how to activate items. I'm hearing the activate sound, so some people are doing it, which is good. But we'll get there in a minute to that point of, for now, just worry about exploring the screen. Don't worry about activating items. We're going to do that very shortly, but I do want to check in on people first, okay? So that's your assignment, and I'll be right back. Take 3 minutes or so, and I want to check in on people to make sure they have VoiceOver going. All right. Are they hearing me now? Okay. All right, so a few of you you're in different places. I see some of you have activated items and everything. That's great. So you've explored the screen. What I want to show you is how to activate an item. Okay? So your homework right now is to, if you have the weather app on your home screen, you want to find the weather app by navigating around with your finger. And so when it's selected, I wonder if I have it here. I'm turning it up to the max, and I'm going to try to find it myself.
Photos, camera, reminders, notes, home, clock, FaceTime, calendar.
There's the calendar, so we could do that.
Voice memo, contacts, maps, find my TV, podcast, books, app store, news, stocks,
We look up stocks, apparently.
doc, music, mail, file, suggestions.
I thought weather would be on here, but let's do the calendar.
Double tap to open.
So say you want to activate the calendar, okay? So what you want to do is select the calendar.
FaceTime, calendar.
Okay, in my case, it was on the top right, but your mileage may vary. And then
Tap to open.
when it's selected, after you've touched on it once, then take your finger and tap twice, really fast in succession, okay? So I'm going to tap twice. And then you'll hear a little ka-tick,
What's
and then it will open the app. And usually when it opens the app, it will also announce the name of the app. So it'll say calendar or whatever, so you'll know that's where you're on. That's how you activate items. Now in the calendar app specifically, this is asking me probably,
continue?
whatever. This is Apple bothering me, so
Allow calendar to use your location.
sure, why not calendar?
Allow while using app.
Allow while using app, so I clicked on allow while using app, and then I'm going to double tap to activate that item, so I can use the calendar.
Calendar.
Now I want to teach you one more gesture, and then I'm going to cut you loose on one of your websites, okay? So we did the peace sign, okay? So now we're going to do a three finger. I don't really have a cool name for that, but it's like holding up the number 3. You're holding up 3 fingers in the middle of your hand, probably. It could be any 3 fingers, obviously, but I think technique sort of asks you to use your 3 middle fingers. You could use any 3 fingers. And take your 3 fingers, and then either swipe up or down, and then that will scroll the phone, which is obviously scrolling is one of the main things we do on these infernal devices, so that's an important gesture. So first make sure you're kind of selected the area that you want to scroll on, so tap on the middle of the screen or elsewhere. So it's saying Thursday, April 15th. I'm going to take my 3 fingers,
Access event.
and I'm going to swipe up, so from the bottom of the device to the top. And that will scroll me down the page.
11 a.m. to 12
So scroll down, and you hear that little skeeching sound, like it's skeeching down the page. And that's the bottom.
12 a.m.
And I can
to
go
1
up,
p.m. 11
I can go
a.m. to
down. Okay? And if I'm in the calendar app, I can also swipe left and right with 3 fingers, and that will bring me to different days.
3 p.m. Friday, Thursday
Thursday to
April
Friday.
15, 4 p.m. Saturday,
And it's a Saturday.
April
Okay?
15.
All right. So what I want you to do now is take a few minutes, and I want you to, which may be a bit of a challenge for you, but try to pull up a website for your organization, your personal website, or some other website that you use every day. Okay? And you're going to do an accessibility evaluation. So what you want to do is open Safari, find it on your home screen, press the home button.
Comma, doc, Safari.
Safari is usually in the dock, which is the part at the bottom of the screen. Find Safari, and I haven't shown you this because I'm assuming most of you are still navigating visually, but you may not be. You can also swipe with 1 finger left and right to move sequentially through the different items.
Messages.
So from Messages, Safari,
Music.
Music,
Mail.
Mail. Okay? So open Safari, and you want to try to find your website. And that will involve using this keyboard. You may want to turn VoiceOver off for the time being and pull up the website. But if you want a challenge, you can try using the VoiceOver with the keyboard, which will involve tapping on a letter and then double tapping to activate it in the default mode. Okay?
Music.
But you may want to turn off VoiceOver, find your website, and then turn it back on. It is cheating, but typing is really challenging when you're first starting out. So,
Music. Safari.
okay, I'm going to come around the room and check on people, and then try to think about whether or not the site, anything surprised you about this. Please be quiet. Try to think about whether or not anything surprises you about the site. and ask yourself, I think one of the easiest things to evaluate is, are all the elements labeled? So try to run your finger over as many elements as possible and listen to what they are, and does it surprise you? Especially things like buttons and images. Are those buttons and images labeled correctly by the person who made the website? Or does it just say button? Or 19271945.jpg or whatever. So, all right, I'm going to come around. Can we pull up that the page where we're doing the accessibility evaluation, just so they have it up there? Yeah, and maybe just so they can have it in front of them. Yeah. Hey, Josh.
Is there anything you want me to just wander around and help?
Yeah, that would be help. Thank you. We're probably going to be like 10 more. You knocked me off, so I can go around and talk.
I don't know if you guys hear from where you.
Okay, so some people have unlocked a secret feature, and that is screen curtain, which is basically a feature that makes it so that the screen appears to be off, but the phone is not off, and you can still use VoiceOver. And the idea behind that is if you're blind, you don't need the screen to be on, wasting battery all the time, and you also don't need people looking over your shoulder, seeing what you're doing. So to turn that feature on or off, I would say don't worry about it, but you can try it out if you want. But it's 3 fingers, and then you want to tap 3 times, okay? And then that will turn off the screen, and your only way of interacting will be VoiceOver, okay? So be careful. The speech off, exactly. So that's another thing is if your VoiceOver stops talking to you, but it's still kind of making noise as you move around the screen, and it's clearly still on because whatever the interactions are different, then you want to take your 3 fingers and tap twice, and that will turn the speech back on. Okay. So yeah, lot to learn. All right, we're gonna do 2 more. We're gonna do 3 more minutes, and then I want to see if anyone succeeded in finding a website and navigating around. I know it's a short amount of time, but that's what we have. This music to my ears. And this voice is Samantha. So that's the default voice, and that's probably the person who talks to me the most in my life is Samantha. So. I have Stockholm syndrome. Expensive, but I can't really go back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do 2 more minutes. All right. So did anyone manage to? And I'll come around with the mic. Did anyone manage to pull up a website and have any sort of experience of it, or an app and explore? Okay, I'm hearing a yes, so I'm going to try to navigate toward the yes. So keep saying yes. Anyone over here somewhere? Let me come with the mic. Yes, it won't be. It probably won't be good, but that's life, in the big city. Thank you very much.
We brought up a website, and I have two problems. One is I accidentally made the speech much faster than it was. I don't know how I did that.
So you made the speech much faster than it was.
Right. And then now I can't scroll my website.
It looks like. What are you seeing visually there? Hang on. Oh, it's very fast. You might be zoomed in. All right, so there's kind of an advanced way to do this. So basically, and this is the trickiest gesture that people learn at the beginning of voiceover. And basically, it's you're taking two fingers, like you're pinching, but you want to then turn like a clock. So I'm going to show you how to do it, but it's not going to necessarily help everyone. So I'm going to... And that's called the rotor. It's kind of like you're turning a dial, like an old-fashioned dial. And then what you want to do is find speech rate. And then you want to swipe up or down to change the speaking rate.
Okay.
How? That good?
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a kind of a cool gesture, but some people struggle with it. It can be hard for people for motor skills reasons to be able to do that. Some people have a hard time. But it's a cool gesture if it works for you. There's ways to turn it off if it's too hard. Not as far as I know. Does anyone else has anyone have an experience of like opening a website, maybe trying out labels or just looking at images, doing anything like that? I bet people are struggling to open websites. Did anyone open an app and have an experience with the app at all, or something that surprised you? Yeah, let's do it. Do you want to tell us what you tried out?
I tried Discord. It's a social media app that I use on a daily basis.
It's kind of like Slack for gamers, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And what was your experience of Discord?
It's not as accessible as I thought it would be.
So actually, I use Discord too, and something funny about Discord is the way they implemented it, I think they made a mistake or something. So if you try to swipe up or down, it reverses it. So if you swipe up, it goes up. If you swipe up, it's supposed to go down, but it goes up.
Yeah.
They didn't. So someone implemented it not really knowing how VoiceOver works or something, and it's still usable. But this is also a normal experience of using a screen reader, is that things are pretty wonky. So you have to learn the ins and the outs of all the different things, which is unfortunate, but it is how it is.
I know when I Discord on like a Mac or something, they actually ask you if you're using a screen reader. At least that's how I've experienced it.
Yeah, I think that is actually, it's a little bit of an anti-practice, because then I'm going to go to the front. Thank you. Oh, yeah, go ahead. All right, so we had a couple of interesting experiences. We're going to close out, but I want to highlight a few experiences that people had. One was we had someone use the app Discord, and there was some oddly implemented behavior that I've also experienced, where if you swipe up, it swipes down, it goes down. If you swipe down, it goes up. So it's inverted, and that's pretty normal for screen readers. Is that apps have implemented all different ways, and most often they're great experiences, but sometimes there's things you have to learn or things that don't work, and that's pretty normal. If you are interested in going a little further and testing things out, two apps that might be interesting for you to explore are the Twitter app, and they did fire their accessibility team, and there's interesting new bugs popping up there all the time, and the Audible app, which is for, you think an audio book player would be pretty accessible, but actually it is, but it has some pretty odd behavior and implementations and labels, so it's actually a pretty interesting use case, because it's something that should be really blind friendly, and it's fine, but it's also an interesting one to explore. So I just kind of want to wrap things out here. And I want to say, can you go to the last page, and I'll just say. So I want to say, first of all, how do you turn the damn thing off? but I hope that it's been interesting. And actually, I have found that whenever I run this, about something like 5 or 10% of the people who try it, they don't use it for everything. It's a lot, but they've actually found some use cases for it. I know there's a woman I know who her eyes get very tired in the evening. I mean, she's sighted, but her eyes get very tired in the evening, and she uses VoiceOver to listen to articles and so on. And there's people who have experiences like that. Or one person uses screen curtain, or actually it's color invert, so that he doesn't wake up his husband in the morning, which is another accessibility feature, but that's universal access for you. It's these things, like dark mode, for example, is an accessibility feature that was sort of adopted by everybody. A lot of people like dark mode. So how can you kind of make a difference with all this? I would say, if you learn to use this a little bit, and you are all now screen readers users now, and you can't go back. But you have a little bit about this, and you're like, okay, I can at least pull up a website and try things out. But what you should do is, if your organization makes a website, you don't have to be an accessibility consulting genius, but just open up your iOS, open up the screen reader, and just see if the things are labeled. Check that it's sane. Check that it's working, and give them that feedback. And honestly, that will make you more valuable to your organization. It's a useful skill, and it doesn't necessarily require that you learn every bit of WCAG or whatever, So there's that. The other thing you can do is, if you find accessibility issues, if you get a little more into this, try to create a bug report. And there is I think it's accessibility@apple.com or something like that. Apple does listen to accessibility requests. You can tell them about bugs in iOS, or if these app developers, you could try to track them down on GitHub, track them down on email, track them down on social media, on Twitter, and say, hey, Discord, when I swipe up, it goes up, like it doesn't go down, say that to them. And because there are a lot of more blind people than you would think, but it is helpful if you kind of add your voice to our voices when and advocate for us a little bit. So I think that is really a wrap to the screen reader thing. The only thing I haven't told you is how to turn it off. So it is kind of the same process as turning it on. Hold down your Siri button, either the home button or the button on the top if you don't have a home button, and then say VoiceOver off. And the other thing you can do is go into the menu, go to settings, and then go to the accessibility settings, which are usually about 5 items below general. And then the first item in the accessibility settings is VoiceOver. You can go in there, toggle it off. There will be a warning. There you go, VoiceOver off. People are succeeding. And you can, there's a toggle, hit it, and then there'll be a warning saying once VoiceOver is off, you may not be able to use your device, and go ahead and say, yes, I want to turn it off, and then it'll be turned off, okay? All right, so thank you very much. That's the end of the screen reader workshop. So Jen is going to sort of end us out here, and I mean, before she does, I think, can we just do a quick round of applause for Jen? I just really want to say a couple of words about kind of the power that you guys have as potential advocates for people who are disabled. First of all, I hope, there's always a preaching to the choir element to all this stuff, but, you are people who cared enough to come to an event like this and sit in the seat and listen to all of us talk, and that's greatly appreciated. I would say if you are kind of new to accessibility, if you're sitting in one of these seats and you haven't thought too much about accessibility and you find it interesting, guess what? You now know probably more than a lot of people in your organization and almost everyone, unfortunately. So depending on what organization you're in. So I'm not saying that you necessarily need to adopt that mantle, but now that you're in this position of knowing a little bit more about accessibility, it's important. If you do decide to advocate in your own organization, and there's a lot of ways you can do that if you're a teacher. There's many teachers here, there's many technologists, there's students, and there's researchers. If you're a teacher, look out for disabled students, and also think about using accessible materials and assume that you do have accessible students in your class. And guess what? Not every disabled student will come up and tell you about it, and you would be surprised. I mean, when I was in college, I didn't tell all my professors that I couldn't see the blackboard. I couldn't, So think about making things a little more multimodal, about giving people resources that aren't you talking in front of the class, and incorporating some of these accessibility practices into your classroom. If you're a researcher, think about the kinds of papers you publish. Think about how you make data available. Think about the kinds of papers that you write. Think about equations. How are those structured? Are you using a tool that will make those equations readable to people? And often it's not much more work for you, but if you think about it and you use something like MathJax, they will actually make those equations readable. And if you're a technologist, you guys build stuff. You guys, the guys who build the stuff that we use, and you decide how it works. You decide if it's going to be semantic. You decide if this is going to work with screen readers. If blind people are going to be able to use that technology. And I know you don't always have that power, but if you kind of shove in the right direction, it can make a really big difference for a lot of people. Jen's going to close us out, but none of us can make you be an advocate, but if you do choose to be an advocate, it can make an enormous difference. And honestly, even coming out and supporting in this day of accessibility is incredible. I don't know. I know that some people have been a little bit emotional in sort of some of the talks today, and I'm one of them. It really means a lot to have people sit in these seats, to think about accessibility in STEM, to think about accessibility in astronomy, and to kind of include more people in this very cool research. So thank you for that. I'm going to give this over to Jen.
Thank you. Okay. So we're at 5 minutes out. We're basically done. Let's just wrap this up. Want to thank everyone so much for coming today and the people online. And it really means a lot that you all came and engaged with all of this. And I hope you're able to leave a little more knowledgeable about accessibility, a little more interested, and maybe taking some steps when you're creating things and building things and making sure what you build is accessible. And tell everyone you know, share the resources. All of these talks will be posted online, both the recordings of the talks and any slides that were used. They're actually already posted, the slides, on the schedule. And last minute wrapping up, if you have an iPad, please return it to me before you leave. Okay, yeah, maybe if you raise your hand, they'll collect some of the iPads. Okay, and don't sneak out with one. And also, if you have a listening device, that's another device we handed out to some people, if you could give that back too. Okay, and I want to thank a bunch of people for helping out with this event. We had folks on AV, we had a moderator, we had a lot of people helping organize and plan, and then all of our amazing speakers. Josh Mealy for coming all the way out from California. He doesn't... I think we got a lot of, we've listened to a lot of really interesting things, and I hope it percolates and you found it interesting. And I hope you all have a nice rest of your day.